is God?
Dad, Mom says I came from an ape.
What? Is God real?
When did creation begin?
Think about everything.
And if you still don't have the answer,
let's talk about it.
Active FM, let's talk Lwando. Yeah, your man here right now, excited. And I believe that out there you are blessed. So just make sure that you stay tuned into our show. And remember that we are Let's Talk Show. We are here to encourage you. We are here for you. Because, you know, as people, we actually go through so much. And sometimes not what we go through, but it's what's happening in us. There are so many things that are taking place in us. And, you know, we don't even have the strength. We don't even have the ability to maneuver, you know, through these things that are taking place in our lives. And that's what we are here for. We are here for you, you know, to give you hope, to help you, you know, to inspire you. Yes, to inspire you, to motivate you, to aspire you. So we believe that you're gonna be blessed, because when you are blessed, we're also blessed. Let's talk Active FM. Yeah, so today, we're looking at something that's interesting. The things, in fact, this is the topic of the show, the things that shape us. The things that shape us. So we're always now looking at history. So here we are, 19th century. Tell us more about what happened in 19th century. So that's what I'm going to be telling you about. Yeah. And we're looking at things that were interesting the last time in our last show. So how, you know, I was so surprised that Austria in the 18th century was so big, and you can still see them here. So we're going to be talking more about the guy called Napoleon. Yeah, he is from France. Not as like he still exists, but that's where he was existing. That's where he was ruling. So it's very interesting, the things that he did and how he was almost all over. I guess because when he was in power already, like South America, your Latin Americans, they were because of Spain, because of how Spain actually colonized like most of the countries in South America. So this guy is all over and is fighting, you know, and his main enemy is actually Britain. It doesn't like the British. He wants to take them down. And there's this ongoing war. And what happens is that we see that in South America, what happens is that people now, they started, you know, the Latin Americans, they started fighting. You know, and the Napoleon with the guys from Spain, they were normal now. You know, they never had that control. You would say their power actually declined. That's why these people were able to fight for their independence. And we also learn about Haiti, dependence, how slaves actually, you know, and some of them obviously got executed, but how most of these slaves actually stole guns and they started, you know, fighting for their freedom. And at the same time, how, I think, in fact, what I'm going to mention, most people, they don't know this. I remember hearing about this the first time, and you sort of think the person who's telling you about these things, he's biased or she's biased. You know, it was very interesting hearing about this. So what happened is that the British actually, they went against this slavery, this trading of slaves. You know what I'm saying? In the 19th century, that's what took place. They went against. In fact, there's a story about them that they went to like one of the ports in Brazil, and they started just destroying the boats that were carrying people as slaves, selling people as slaves. And that obviously was also something that I believe caused them to clash with Napoleon. At the same time, the U.S. Congress, they passed a law to say it's illegal to import slaves. So even in America, even though most American states in the South, they actually didn't agree. So they carried on, importing slaves and all that. But I feel like you can actually say there was light, if I can, there was sort of like light that was shining, based on the injustice that was, committed towards people. You know what I'm saying? And so it's very, very interesting. So let's go. As I said, we're gonna be reading about Napoleon a lot, and I believe about Haiti, obvious about Britain at the same time. Remember, we're talking about Austria. How now Napoleon, so the guys from France, they're fighting. France is actually fighting with Austria, and most of the times Austria is defeated. And how at the same time this guy, he joins in with Spain. In fact, I was surprised that Napoleon was actually, once crowned as the king of Italy. So these are the interesting events, and we're still learning about even the Ottomans. How because their empire actually stretched to places like Serbia, and how the Serbians actually rebelled against the Ottomans, and how Russia destroyed, or they defeated Sweden. They defeated Sweden. So some parts that now Sweden used to rule over, used to control, they were now controlled. They actually fell under the rule of the Dutch. And we're also going to be talking about, Portugal. So let's look at this, and I believe this is very interesting. So they just give us a description. 1801, Britain is rising as individual power. The average life expectancy is around 40. I think that's very, very low. 40. Imagine you expected to live for 40 years and then you die. So Britain makes Ireland part of a single British kingdom. So one of the things that you learn about that. So let's move to Napoleon. So still in the 1801 AD, Napoleon of France has defeated Austria. Remember the great Austria in the last century, because they were shining. In the Treaty of Lwando, Austria renounces claims to the Holy Roman Empire. The Ottoman Turks, trying to maintain empire, are fighting the South family and its Sunni Wahhab allies. Going on, told you we're going to be talking about Haiti. So leader of Haitian independence receives a message from the French General Brunet to meet for negotiations. So to cut the story short, they promise him that there won't be anything that's violent. But what they do is that they actually, when they meet him, they take him and they went to, they took him to prison. They imprisoned him. The war-weary British sign a threat ending their war against France. So that is called the Treaty of Amiens. Oyo becomes the 17th U.S. state. So one of the things that you learn about is that you have all these U.S. states, but at that time, it was like a build-up. Some like Florida at that time was not part of the state. I'll give you a reason why. Because some of the land in North America was actually under control of the French. So they were not regarded as the states. One of the things that we learn about is that people, in fact, they started now gaining their own dependency from the Spain regime. So it's an interesting topic because, as I said, the name of the show is Things That Shape Us. We can actually see how everything built up to be, the way it is right now. How even America became, a country with all the states and all this. So let's go on. A German makes morphine from opium. Physicians are delighted that opium has been tamed. Morphine is lauded for its reliability and safety. So remember, we still use morphine even today. So that is interesting. In England, 7 Irish rebels are sentenced and they hanged. So Irish are rebelling against British rule. They are crushed. Going on, one of the things that you learn about is that now learning about Asia. Japan refuses to trade with arriving Russian ships. So I think reading about Russia, the Japanese also, it's interesting. They have told you the Serbs revolt against Ottoman authority and win autonomy, status, self-rule within. So they rule themselves within the Ottoman Empire, demonstrating Ottoman weakness to Greeks who remain under the Ottoman rule. Haiti proclaims itself as a republic and independent. So one of the things I told you about, Spain joins Napoleon's war as an ally against the British. You see, this war keeps going on. In the wartime atmosphere and the defense against French royalty, the Senate in France votes in favor of Napoleon Bonaparte becoming Napoleon I, Emperor of the French. Napoleon crowns himself emperor. Beethoven is enraged. He dislikes royalty and tears up the title page for his Symphonie Bonaparte, which will be known as his Symphony Number 3. Spain joins, as I said, Napoleon War at ally against the British. Russia, Austria. Remember, Austria was defeated by Napoleon, so it's obvious that they're going to go with Russia. So Russia, Australia, and Sweden ally themselves with the British. In Milan, Napoleon is crowned King of Italy. Look at that. He is looking towards an invasion of England. I think that was just his biggest aim, This guy just wanted to take England down. A French fleet sails north to Spain's Atlantic port of Cadiz. Napoleon orders his French and Spanish ships out of Cadiz to do battle with the British. The British win at the Battle of Trafalgar, frustrating Napoleon's invasion plan. And they're going to keep frustrating him. So one of the things that you learn about is that Egypt used to be ruled by the Mamluks. So we spoke about that. So the Mamluks were actually foreigners. They were taken there as slaves. But what happened is that through, their service, either it was in military, one of them actually ended up becoming a ruler of Egypt, which opened now the opportunity for other people to possess, positions of being, officials in Egypt. But now what happens is that we learn that they were actually driven out. Some of them, it's a sad thing because they were invited to this feast, and in that feast they were actually slaughtered. And at the same time, so we in Africa, at the same time, what happened was that the British, they used to have, I can say, they were more in control of Egypt, but because of the wars that were going between them and Napoleon, what happens is that Napoleon actually helped the person who, or I can say the people, the opposition that was existing in Egypt, to overthrow the British that were existing in Egypt, that were found in Egypt. So they are driven out because of Napoleon's assistance offered to the Egyptians. So going on, and maybe this will also give you an interest, or you'll be interested in this. So, for 2 years, the British East Indian Company has been warring against the Maratha Empire, which was allied with Napoleon. Yeah. This is nice. Think about this. This gives you a big view, because it does feel like the problem with these guys, it was, at home, like in Europe. That's where the problem was. But for me, it seems like it was just them who's controlling more land, who's known, who has power out there. Because some of these clashes, they were not just at home, but they were, you find these clashes taking places in countries that they have colonized, because one country is colonized by the French, and then one country is colonized by the British. You know what I'm saying? And this is a time where the Britain, I mean, they have power. They famous. Almost everything is going towards their side. They getting the gold. They doing well, if I can say that. And but before that, in just previous centuries, French used to be like Britain. You know what I'm saying? French used to be like Britain. So definitely that Napoleon is trying to bring back, that power. Because he's trying. One of the things we're gonna be looking at is how, when these Latin Americans, they started, fighting for themselves. Now Britain escaped all these plans that Napoleon had against them, to sort of like, destroy them economical. So it's interesting. It's interesting looking at these things and how they're not just fighting at home, but like they're fighting in South America, they're fighting in India, and if in India, in Asia, so what's happening is that if the British are doing well there, guess what? Napoleon will join the opposition just to overthrow the British, because that's what you saw in Egypt, and that's what you also see in North America. So interesting. These are the things that shape us. Don't forget, these are the things that shape us. So the Emperor of Austria, Francis I, abdicates his other title, Holy Roman Emperor. The Holy Roman Empire, created in 1800s, is formally dissolved, with Napoleon reorganizing much of it into the Confederation of the Rhine. So you can see that Napoleon is famous at this time, So let's go on. The US, this is very interesting. So, extending its power at sea, Britain outlaws slave trading across the Atlantic for its own ships and for ships from all countries united with Napoleon, right? Britain turns a presence on the coast of Western Africa into a crown colony, Sierra Leone. So, look at this. Do you think, it's just a thought, and do you think the reason why I don't think that, because when you start reading about people like William Wilberforce, people who were against slavery, he maybe in future we're gonna be looking at him, what he did and all that. But just for in this specific event, do you think that the British they were against slavery because they knew that if they fight against slavery, it's something that will actually bring injustice or bring defeat to Napoleon? You know what I'm saying? Because here it does specify that they went against the ships, from countries or rulers that were in ally with Napoleon, in alliance with Napoleon. So it's interesting. So in Manchester, England, did I skip something? Because I don't want to skip something. In fact, yeah. So the U.S. Congress passes a law that bans the importation of slaves into U.S. a lot to be largely ignored in the southern states. In fact, I had something in my mind, because you do find that it's so easy in our lives to, categorize people, under the same label. Do you understand what I'm saying? Give them the same character. You know what I'm saying? Give them the same mindset. But it's interesting because you have these people, and they in North America, but they, even though you look at them, because this is the thing that we have nowadays, it's like there's a certain mindset that's associated with the skin color, and I don't see that, because I'm looking at history and I'm seeing American people just somewhere in the north and somewhere in the south, and some in the north. They, in fact, North actually abolished this, slavery importation, but the guys in the north, they didn't. They still went on. You see what I'm saying? So for me, I think the biggest thing, it has really nothing to do with skin color. It's all about the mindset. It's all about the mindset. It's all about the values that a person, embraces. So it's interesting. Going on, in Manchester, England, the largest factory complex in the world opens, and the event draws spectators from across Britain and beyond. The factory uses steam acquired from burning coal. It's a change from power by river water, which is too limited a source of coming industrial expansion. The availability of coal is helping the British to surpass the Dutch industrial. So look at that. There's just a competition when it comes to the economy. Going on, Napoleon moves to consolidate his position in Europe. He defeats a combined Prussian and Russia force in February. Remember, we spoke about Prussia, and there was just on north of one of the state of German. So it's like north of German, and they were doing well. They used to fight, they used to defeat. So they had their own power. But things now, it seems like they are against them. Like Austria also was defeated by Napoleon. So Prussia and also the force, Russian force, was also destroyed. So this is 1807 AD in February. So Danzig surrenders to him. He defeats the Russians in June, occupies Königsberg. Think about this. This guy was powerful. Think about this. He was powerful, so he had good military. It just couldn't penetrate through Britain. So Alexander of Russia is annoyed with the British and agrees to meet with Napoleon, because maybe they didn't get involved. They didn't help when they were defeated by Napoleon, so they decided to side with him. In August, Napoleon demands that Portugal join the trade boycott against the British and declare war on British. We can see this guy's aim is to just take down Britain. Portugal hesitates. Napoleon early Spain allows French troops to pass through its territory to Portugal. The French captured Lisbon as Portugal's royal family flees to Brazil. Napoleon intervenes in quarrel between Spain's king, but at the same time he was declared in Milan as a Spain king. He was crowned. So the sort of like division. So Charles IV and the son of Charles, Ferdinand, he solves the quarrel between them, and it's interesting because he makes the two of them prisoners, but even though it was in a comfortable setting, and moves his brother Joseph from the kingdom of Naples to the throne in Spain. My word. This is interesting. So he's solving a problem, and at the same time he imprisons these kings that have a quarrel. And then he imprisoned them, in a comfortable way. But while they were in prison, he moves his brother from Naples to become the king of Spain. His name was Joseph. That's Napoleon's brother. So that's interesting. An unusual barbarous war begins within Spain with Napoleon as usual caring little about their hearts and minds. Resistance to the French spreads to Portugal. So you can see he did that, and I think that caused actually problems, because one of the things that I've noticed is that reading the Bible and looking at other countries is that there are two problems. In fact, even in how we live life, is that you have Napoleon, and it's sort of like at home, he's in Europe, but the power of Spain has actually stretched almost around the world, and they have land, if I can say that. They have power, they have some control in South America, and they had most control in South America and some control in North America. And you can see people that they allied with, nations that they allied with. So you can say they were all over. But what happens is that because of what he did in Europe, because some of people in Milan in Spain, they supported him, but because of what he did by prisoning the king of Spain and Charles, what happened was, and then what it does after that, it's a way of just taking down the king but prisoning them as if he's solving the problems, and then he places his brother on the throne. That now at home caused the problem. So that's an internal problem. There was a problem at home, because even now the countries that were close to home, like Portugal, which he also captured, now there was resistance against him, against the French. It was because of that decision that he made right there. And at the same time, there were problems that were happening externally, like in other continents where he had power. And it's so interesting looking at this thing, that sometimes there are things within us that fall apart, and then while things they fall apart within you, you find that outside, like your external things, they are also falling apart. So it's very important that you make sure that you secured within, and God actually speaks directly into our lives. So this is very, very, very interesting. So I have to close, because time is going. So Russia defeats, I hope you remember this. Okay, something interesting. 1808, guys, still 1808. This is so long. So John Dalton argues that matter consists of a range of atoms, each of which has a distinct weight. I think that's close to home if you understand science. So he's the one who made an argument. So Russia defeats Sweden. Sweden loses Finland. But remember, what happened was that once Russia and Sweden, they were together with, it's interesting. Russia, Sweden, they were in alliance with Britain. But now because Russia got defeated by Napoleon, so he decided to now ally with Napoleon. So which means he was no more on the same side with the Sweden. So they defeated the Sweden. It's amazing how the betrayal, the betrayal that used to take place. So Russia defeats Sweden. Sweden loses Finland. So Sweden had, control over Finland, which becomes an autonomous Grand Duchy within Russia's empire. Returning to Hawaiian island from California and hoping for trade, Russians built a fort at Honolulu and tried to establish themselves on the island of Kauai, but they were ignored and driven out. So listen to this. Napoleon spread thin. The Austrians defeats him at the Battle of Aspen-Ezling. They are there. We find the Austrians again. So the Austrians, obviously, they fail to follow up on their victory, so he defeats them again. Napoleon's economy blockade is not working. Britain's exports reach an all-time high. So, as I said, Britain is doing well at this time. So, allied with the Portuguese against Napoleon, the British negotiating an agreement with the Portuguese calling for gradual abolition of slave trade across South Atlantic. Now, another thing that's interesting, people have been migrating from the United States into West Florida. These settlers rebelled and declared independence from Spain. Again, Spain is losing here. Spain is losing. Recognizing Spain's weakened condition from occupation by Napoleon, the U.S. President James Madison and Congress declare region for United States, a move not recognized international, but they recognize Florida as part of United States, you know. And I have to sort of conclude now. I just want to give you the last point because this has been interesting. I won't lie to you. This has been so interesting. Napoleon marching to Russia exposes his his recklessness and shallow strategic thinking. His march into Russia is not going well. His three top-ranking subordinates urged a halt to the campaign. Napoleon agrees, but the following day he changes his mind. He doesn't want to admit folly or show weakness. On September 7, at the Battle of Borodino, he loses 30 to 35 more men, more dead, you know, wounded or captured. A week later, he is in Moscow. In mid-October, he begins a terrible march back from Russia, ending his campaign with none of the army of this is a big number, 600,000 with which he began. So we can see this guy's, failures. What's happening to him? Napoleon has failed to win enough friends in Spain. British and Spain forces defeat his military. Napoleon withdraws from Germany after the Russians, Prussians, Australians, and Swedes defeat him there. His Confederation of Rhine falls into history trash bin. Jaw. Learning from one's life. So now I'm concluding Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, over all the livestock, all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his image. So he, in the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. So we can see how God shaped us. He shaped us to rule, you know. And the question is within you, you know, being integrated, or if I can say, you know, being an aggregate of past experiences, you know, betrayals that have been caused by people into your life, which have, you know, built up, or which out of them you have become this character that you are within yourself. You know, how are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And God created us to actually rule not just outside but within, because in our world today it's all about fame. It's all about, hey, look, I'm cool, I'm doing this, and it's all about the outside things, you know, driving, you know, having a nice position, a job and all that. But you find that people within, they're struggling, because if someone was able to see what people are going through within, they were going to be able to stop those who seem to be doing good. Suddenly bad news, you know, a spread that someone just committed suicide. All along they seemed like they were doing good. So God made us to actually not just rule outside, the birds and all that, you know what I'm saying. He made us in his image. Why? Because in his image there's victory, there's freedom within. we carry a nature that is in righteousness. You know what I'm saying? And all God wants to do is to give you the best. So all you can just do is to accept Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, to experience what God gives. And I believe you have been blessed. And we're going to have more, and we're still going to be looking at Hitler. So it's going to be interesting. And we want to move to Africa. Some bad things took place in history. And most of us, we don't know about these things. We have to question and really, spread the mistakes that were caused in the past, specifically in Africa, so that we don't, always blame people, but we can fix on our side, everything that we did wrong. So right now you can accept Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior. Just say, dear Lord, with all my heart, I believe in you. I confess with my mouth that you are the Son of God. You were raised from the dead, taken to heaven. And right now, you are seated at the right hand of the Father, interceding for me. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Like what you're listening to? Follow Active FM on all social media platforms. Facebook at /Active FM Online Radio, Instagram at Active FM 777, YouTube at Active FM, and Twitter at Active FM.